We then are asked questions in the exam regards to the important role played by the different kinds of chemical mediators. So one easy question regarding the FMG exam can be with regards to the classification of the chemical mediators, right? The moment we are talking about in terms of preformed mediators, of course, we remember about histamine, one of the key mediators involved in vasodilation. That was the NEET PG 2021 question. INI-CET 21 question. Histamine is present in mast cells, and mast cells are picked up with the help of toluidine blue. The actions of histamine are quite very much replicated by serotonin as well. And we do have the role played by lysosomal enzymes that we talked about in discussion with Nicholas. When we are talking about freshly formed mediators, very important mediator is nitric oxide. One, because it is responsible for causing vasodilation. It's obviously coming from arginine. That's a biochem question. Nitric oxide is also responsible for the formation of free radicals, which are again responsible for targeting the bacteria, right? So peroxynitrite formation from nitric oxide is helpful for targeting the bacteria. The other important ones which are asked in the exam are arachidonic acid metabolites. These are going to be derived from arachidonic acid, which you remember, arachidonic acid was coming from the action of phospholipase A2, biochemistry link over here. And now this arachidonic acid, I must recall over here for you, this arachidonic acid can be acted upon by the COX enzyme responsible for the formation of prostaglandins and thromboxane A2. The thromboxane A2 is going to be responsible for having its source in the platelets. It causes vasoconstriction. It is responsible for facilitating platelet aggregation. When we are talking about other prostaglandins, we need to be familiar with prostaglandin I2, which is also going to be given the name of prostacyclin. It is having exactly opposite action of thromboxane A2. It is coming from blood vessels or endothelial cells, and it is responsible for causing vasodilation, as well as it is going to be inhibitory for platelets. So it is anti-aggregatory in nature. We had a mention of other prostaglandins, say for example, prostaglandins D2, E2 and F2 alpha, out of which I shared with you friends, or mentioned over here in the notes as well. PGE2 is responsible for causing very specifically the development of fever as well as pain. So PGE2 causes fever and pain. E for elevation of that body temperature, and E for, remember the fact, E with the sound that you come when there is going to be pain. When there is going to be an action of an enzyme that's given the name of lipoxygenase, this is going to be responsible for the formation of leukotrienes. One leukotriene that I made mention of earlier, leukotriene B4, is responsible for causing chemotaxis. Other leukotrienes are going to be responsible for causing the severe bronchospasm. That's the reason why you have a mention over here that leukotrienes C4, D4, E4 are also being given the name of SRSA. They're example of very powerful bronchoconstrictor agents, right? Of course, we cannot afford to forget the biochemistry question, an easy one, that arachidonic acid is an example of a 20-carbon fatty acid, which is going to be an example of an essential fatty acid, right? So those are the questions which have been asked in the exam with regards to arachidonic acid metabolites. I may remind you that you have certain examples of drugs. For example, steroids are going to act by inhibiting phospholipase A2. The painkillers like NSAIDs are responsible for inhibiting the COX enzyme. Drugs like xylitol are responsible for inhibiting the 5-LOX enzyme. And drugs like montelukast, zafilukast are responsible for inhibiting the receptor. They are leukotriene receptor antagonists, right? When we are talking about cytokines are going to be coming from the cells. They play a very, very important role. That includes interleukin, that includes TNF, and that also includes interferons. These are the example of cellular freshly formed mediators. In the plasma, we have kinin system, complement system, and coagulation system. So before we talk about the mediators present in the plasma, let's quickly have a look at the different types of actions of the cytokines. Now, when you talk about cytokines, majority of the cytokines are going to increase inflammation. So they are pro-inflammatory in nature. Some cytokines are going to be having systemic effects of inflammation. The ones that are present over here on your screen, interleukin 1, interleukin 6, and TNF alpha, right? Out of which important ones are specifically all three of them. Anti-inflammatory action of cytokines can also be seen. Very, very classically, interleukin 10 and TGF beta. Interleukin 10, which was asked you as an FMG question. TGF beta, which was asked you as an INI-CET November 23 exam question. That's what you need to remember. It is going to be having anti-inflammatory action. And TGF beta and interleukin 10, they also play a very, very important role at the time of wound healing. So after an injury, when you want the scar formation to take place, you obviously would like to reduce inflammation. That's the time interleukin 10, and more importantly, for fibrogenesis, you require TGF beta. That's going to be playing a very critical role. The moment we are thinking in terms of something like cytokines having a dual action, this used to be a favorite for the INI exam at one point of time. We are thinking in terms of interleukin 4 and interleukin 6. So in a lot of conditions, they are having pro-inflammatory action, but sometimes they are said to be having an anti-inflammatory action as well. That's what we need to keep in mind. So far as the interferons are concerned, interferon alpha, beta and gamma are what we are talking about over here. Interferon alpha is the one which is having antiviral activity. Interferon beta is having immunomodulatory activity, so it is useful in the treatment of a patient having multiple sclerosis. Interferon gamma is what is going to be required for a process of a treatment of a condition that is given the name of chronic granulomatous disease. Remember chronic granulomatous disease? Chronic granulomatous disease, yes, you are aware, is going to be seen because of a patient who is going to be having a trouble in the activity of an enzyme that's given the name of NADPH oxidase. So whenever we are thinking in terms of individuals having NADPH oxidase defect, respiratory burst oxidase defect, these are the patients who are going to be having a high risk of development of chronic granulomatous disease. Remember the microbiology link? What exactly is going to be the name of the test by which you make a diagnosis of chronic granulomatous disease? So we do a test which is given the name of, very good, you remember that? The smile on your face tells me that you are feeling confident now. This is nitroblue tetrazolium test. Nitroblue tetrazolium test. Of course, we have another test which was asked in the FMGE exam, which is given the name of the dihydrorhodamine test. So nitroblue tetrazolium test and the dihydrorhodamine test is what you need to remember over here. The way they asked you the question in the screening exam was the fact that patients who are going to be having chronic granulomatous disease, they are more commonly going to be having catalase positive organisms causing infection in them. So pretty much commonly the infections are caused by organisms like Staph aureus or Burkholderia or for that matter Candida. Catalase positive organisms cause infection in patients suffering from chronic granulomatous disease, right? We are going to be talking a bit about chemokines as well, in which alpha chemokine, which is interleukin 8, is important because that is responsible for attracting neutrophils. Beta chemokines would include eotaxin that attracts the eosinophils. Eosinophils incidentally are also being attracted by a cytokine that's given the name of interleukin 5. That's what you need to remember over here. Of course, we are going to be talking about lymphotactin, which is going to be attracting the lymphocytes, right? And then we are going to be having the presence of the CXC chemokines, which are important usually for the purpose of inflammation, as well as we have talked about the CXC R4 and CXC5 with respect to CCR5 with respect to a virus that you read in microbiology, that's a HIV virus. So responsible for facilitating the entry of the virus inside the host cell. Then talking about the chemical mediators which are going to be present in the plasma, just wrapping up about kinin system. So activated by the presence of factor 12, that's a Hedgeman's factor, and this is going to be responsible for the formation of kallikrein. The kallikrein is going to be responsible for the formation of bradykinin. Why do I want you to remember about bradykinin? Because bradykinin is going to be responsible for causing increase in permeability as well as it is going to be contributing to the development of pain. We talked about the pharmacological correlation as well. Increased bradykinin is going to be responsible for causing dry cough, one of the important side effects that you associate with drugs like the ACE inhibitors. The moment we're thinking in terms of the complement system can be activated by the classical pathway, the alternate pathway or the lectin pathway. Commonest usually happens to be the classical pathway in which you are going to be having the involvement of both antigen as well as the antibodies. We are going to be talking about the alternate pathway, very much important so far as infections caused by gram-negative bacteria are concerned, as well as the presence of an exposure to something like snake venom, right? In case of classical pathway activation, the role is being played by IgM and IgG antibody. In case of alternate pathway activation, the role is being played by IgA antibody. And of course, we are going to be having a role that is being played by the lectin pathway as well. Whether it is a classical pathway or the alternate pathway or the lectin pathway, the good point is all of them together are going to be responsible for causing the coming together point is the breakdown of C3. Now, C3b is what is going to be functioning as an example of opsonin molecule. That's what we talked about earlier. And the moment we are thinking in terms of the other individual complement proteins, we should be aware of the fact that C5a and C3a are responsible or functioning as anaphylotoxins, right? So they are responsible for causing degranulation of the mast cell as well as responsible for release of histamine. C3b, as I just now made a mention, is responsible for preferential phagocytosis by the process of opsonization. And importantly is that towards the end, the complement system is going to be working eventually by the formation of what is given the name of MAC. Remember MAC, membrane attack complex. So we had a formula for MAC, C5b-9 complex, and this is what is going to be responsible for causing, boom, the lysis of the microorganism.